Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Anna Giyar-Sashko. I am a board member of the Ukrainian Arbitration Association and a moderator of today's session devoted to communication skills in arbitration. When, why, and how. This topic is quite broad, and today we will try to tackle the most vivid questions, not just interviews as we mentioned in our announcement, but also how to network and on what social medias to advertise and publicize information about your professional success. And we will start with the first topic. Before starting with the first topic, I will introduce our distinguished speakers who kindly agreed to share their thoughts on this sometimes quite tricky topic. So today with us, we have Alexander Drug. Alexander is also a board member of the Ukrainian Arbitration Association and a partner at the Ukrainian law firm Sayenko-Kharenko. Also, we have with us today Katrin Ann Kunz. Katrin is based in Switzerland, and she is a partner at Laliv. Also with us today, Valentin Chesa. Valentina is a partner at the MGC Arbitration, a new boutique law firm, and Valentin is based in Paris. So my first question will be how to sell yourself in an interview. What is important to do at an interview at different levels when you want to be hired as an associate or even as a partner? How to ace your interview. Alexander, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Anna, for a kind introduction. I will probably start by making one observation and giving probably a couple of tips. So the first observation that lawyers in arbitration, they're very mobile. So they're not limited to just one market, one jurisdiction. They have many opportunities, particularly when you're a young lawyer only starting your career. You can have opportunity to go and get LLM, maybe get some other education, maybe try to practice in other jurisdictions. And the opportunities are quite big as compared, for example, to maybe other more traditional practices or transactional practices. And this is something that probably goes to the first tip. So when you are at an interview, be frank and straightforward about your future plans. What you want to do within the next, let's say, 3 years, so that your future employer totally understand what you want to achieve. Maybe you have some other plans. Maybe like you just need to be on the job for 1 year and then you will go somewhere else and try something else. That's probably important for several reasons. For employer, it's usually you need to plan long term. You need to understand how to develop a new team player within your team. And you need to be able to rely on this person going forward in your projects. So the first tip probably is be frank, straightforward about your future plans. The second one probably is be also proactive in a way that ask questions. The interview should not be just a series of questions you get from your interviewer, and you just follow their own. Prepare your own questions. Of course, do your own research about the firm, about the projects publicly known, about the team, but be curious and ask questions. How do you fit into the team? How do you see it? What kind of projects maybe you have apart from publicly known? Well, of course, without maybe confidential details, but generally, you want to understand what you will be dealing with. And this is probably also important. It shows that you are really curious and you are really anxious to discuss these future points because more or less you want to proceed and you want to cooperate and you want to be part of this team. And probably the last one, the tip that is relevant for everyone, including like particularly probably if you are even applying to become a new partner, share your experience in a way that you clearly say what your contribution was in each particular project. So, well, let's say you handled some big project and you were a team leader. So you did everything. You communicated with the client, you supervised the team, you drafted maybe final editing and issuing the documents. If you were on some other position, just tell what the position entailed. So, for example, you covered this particular matter, you were responsible for it, you did the research, you communicated with the team. And this is probably important in a way that when you want to fit in a new team, it's important to understand what exactly you did, what were your responsibilities, and how you can apply this in your future job. So these are the first points from my side.
Thank you, Alexander. Valentin, Katrine, would you like to add something?
Yes, thanks, Anna. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me today, and thank you also to the Ukrainian Arbitration Association. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I hope next time we will be able to organize another event in Kiev. So having said that, I fully subscribe to what Alexander said. There is maybe another point that it's useful to flag, which is there are more and more virtual interviews, be it for internship, but also for other positions. So this, for me, it's a different story. Because as Alexander say, yeah, be straightforward, you have to convey a certain number of messages. When it's virtual, these messages, they may come across in a different way. So it's very important to prepare, I think, to this possibility and maybe, prepare something, a speech, and make sure the messages you want to come across actually do come across, because in a virtual interview there is very little chit chat actually, during which is useful in real life, because there are little messages, soft messages that can easily go through, and it's actually less spontaneous. So you have to in a way look relaxed, but at the same time be prepared to again deliver these messages. So this, I think it's an important point for all of us actually.
If I may just jump in here, good morning, everyone. I think the points you both made are extremely valid, and I also agree entirely with them. Just on this question of virtual interviews, you're right, Valentin, it's a different world altogether. And yes, you need to prepare. However, when you're at the interview, don't read from your notes. We had a candidate recently who did that, and the result was that the answers were not really tailored to the questions. They were ready-made, and it didn't come across naturally at all. So, it's difficult to strike this balance. I think what you do need to really prepare and work on, and that also goes to a point Alexander made, is know how to describe your past cases, your work, the issues that arose. Make sure you've got a response ready, and that's maybe more than a speech. Have bullet points just to refresh your memory, so that you have a ready-made answer that comes out, but that is not stilted, that you can still be relaxed, as you said, Valentin. At the end of the day, it remains a conversation, or it should be a conversation, and it works best when the interviewer hasn't got the impression that it's just the interviewer asking questions and answers, but there's a real conversation, to the extent that you almost forget that you're in the context of a formal interview.
Yeah. And then one good tip, I think, also is to connect really, half an hour before to make sure that everything, the connection is good, because it's very stressful when at the last time it doesn't work, and it actually always happens. I mean, even, this morning, for some reason, I couldn't hear the other participants while we had already make a test. So the only way to mitigate this kind of incident is to really be there half an hour before. You go without the camera, and I think it mitigates a lot the stress necessarily, which is inherent to this kind of exercise.
Okay, and before, thank you for your insights. I think they are very useful, not only for young generation, but also for people who are considering to become partners or applying as literal hires. Okay, before we turn to the next question, can you just give one or two examples of questions that you ask at an interview, Alexander?
Well, I think I already maybe hinted at it, but usually one of the question is, how do you see yourself in 3 years, in 5 years? Where do you see yourself? What kind of projects you want to handle? What kind of responsibilities you want to have? And are you still seeing yourself at this law firm? Maybe somewhere else? So I think that's a question that is typically get asked.
Okay, so no trick questions.
Well, probably nothing like that.
Okay. Do you ask question on substance?
Sometimes, yes, particularly for younger lawyers, yes.
Okay, thank you, Alexander.
Same here on substance, because at a junior level, you don't know what to, there's no past experience you can really rely on. So it's more, how does that person react? So I do present a example, not to test the actual knowledge on substance, but more how that person would set about to, how to do the research, how to present the content. And that also puts the person on the spot. So you see how that person reacts live in a stressful situation. So yes, indeed. Maybe if I could add a few questions I do ask as well during the interviews. If the person is a bit more senior, I would ask typically what is that person's role in the team? What does that person do? Because often what you see is that people try and sell themselves, which is quite normal, but and tend to sell themselves as more senior than they actually are. And it's true that for our purposes, we need to know how they would fit in our existing team, regardless of the title that they may have already or that they aspire to. So really explaining, what have you done in the past in the team? What was your role? If you're at the junior level, did you already delegate to interns? Did you get to draft sections of submissions, or did you just draft memos, etc. So that is definitely one question. Another is also linked to past experience. What were the issues? Tell us about one issue you encountered in one of your cases, and that tests the ability also of presenting something interesting in a very short period of time and in an organized manner.
Yes, I fully agree that the important thing is not really the answer, but how you get there. What the person interviewing the candidate wants to see is their reaction. So the ability to solve a question, not actually solving it in 2 seconds. So I think that what Catherine says is really important in this respect. And also on the role in the team, this I think is crucial, because this, when you get to the stage of the interview, your CV has already been pre-selected, obviously. So your CV is good. The interviewer likes your CV, it matches with the needs of the firm, and so on and so forth. So, and this, goes to the substance. Essentially, you have the academic and whatever requirements needed. So be relaxed on that. But what the interviewer will want to check is whether you are able to actually work in a team, efficiently work in a team. So it's very important to bear this in mind, because it's not only about you, it's also about you and the rest of the world.
Thank you for your answers. Maybe my last question about interviews. Do your law firms conduct any psychological tests?
No.
Okay. Well, we are a baby law firm, so we haven't thought about it for now. We are more on the traditional side of the spectrum regarding interviews, but I don't think that's what we plan to do.
Okay.
But we actually have some tests, particularly for junior candidates, and one of the tests is for attentiveness.
How is it called? Sorry, Alexander.
Well, basically there is a document in 2 languages, and there is like English version, Ukrainian one, and you need to spot in the Ukrainian version as many as like irregularities or inconsistencies as you can.
So did you try it? Is it useful? I mean, what does it show about the person?
Well, it shows if you are careful, if you go into detail, if you spot really, well, for example, the date here, like 12th December, and the interpretation is 13th December or something like that. And there are many things like that. And you can really spot as many as you can. It shows that you really are careful and diligent.
It's a good one, Alexander. I've taken note of that.
At German, for example, we always conducted interview in a language, in all languages that this person indicates in the CV. And sometimes it's very interesting. Just some people, I don't know, spend 1 month learning a language and say, okay, I speak this language.
Yeah, it's true. That's we also do that. I mean, I used to do it in my former firm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, now let's turn to marketing and networking. And let's start with social media and tools, platforms available to lawyers to tell about their professional life. Valentin, what do you have to say about this?
So here again, we have this difference between virtual and in-person marketing, so in which we actually use very different tools. Virtual, we all know what the social media, the most frequent social medias are. I understand that there is a difference. There can be cultural differences. In some places, LinkedIn is considered the professional social media by excellence, but apparently there are places where Facebook is also used as a professional social media. There's Twitter that is very much used apparently. And I also hear that Instagram and Snapchat are now used for professional purposes. So I think I would be interested in having the audience reaction on this, because personally, I don't use Instagram and Snapchat, and I don't really have time for Twitter. So I think it would be very interesting to know what the other people's experience are in this respect. Now the question is, do I really need to follow, to be on social media and to follow as much as possible all this media? Well, again, as I said, for me, for instance, I find it very difficult to be at the same time on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So my approach, but it can be different for other people, of course. I tend to privilege being on LinkedIn and drop the other social media. But again, there can be different approaches. Of course, it is for us and for other even younger practitioners, it's difficult not to be at all on social media. Nowadays, There is a lot going on there, so it's really difficult to be, I would say that it's difficult to be completely absent. So when we were preparing this webinar, I was telling the other speakers that my partner Alexis Moore does not have a LinkedIn account, and he's not on social media. Well, of course, this is a different story because he doesn't really need it. He's already there. He has his network. He's in a way, his career has already been built at a time in which there were no social media. So again, if you are building your career today, I think it's objectively difficult to avoid it. So I don't know if Catherine and Alexander want to add something on these specific points, because of course there is a lot to say. I know, going back to interviews, that there are headhunters that have specific tools to reach people on social media with certain profiles. So this is also something that it is interesting to know, and it's related to our first question.
Yeah, I'll just maybe briefly add in terms of the use of the social media platforms. In the past, in Ukraine, Facebook probably together with LinkedIn were like 50-50 used for professional communication, but now Facebook is more or less phasing out, and LinkedIn probably is the most important and widely used tool, and it gives the most like outreach and result.
Yes, I agree. It's in fact a chance to have all these tools for us to use. And it's great to have LinkedIn that really is, at least in my experience, an international platform and reaches people from different generations. So yes, it's true, maybe more senior practitioners are either not on LinkedIn or not active members, but still their employees or colleagues are on LinkedIn. So it's fantastic. I personally think it's a great chance that we have this, and that the young generation has this from the start. I think my regret is that when I started off, it didn't exist or I wasn't aware of it. So I didn't start from scratch using these tools. If only I had been born a bit later.
Yeah, we are kind of in between different generations in this respect. But yeah, I think it's you're absolutely right, Catherine. Again, we are also, I mean, let's face it, we are also very busy people, because we actually have, I mean, if practitioners in international arbitration usually spend long hours working, so it's not always easy to devote time to your social profile on social media. So I think everyone has to find a way, depending on, you know, the possibilities. And so for instance, I tried to do it during lunchtime. If I, you know, eat in front of my computer, I try to check what happens on social media. But you know, of course, there are many different possibilities, and yeah, what I would advise not to do is probably mixing the social and the professional and personal communication on social media. This I think there are millions of different ways of communicating on social media, but this is something I would personally not suggest.
Thank you, Valentin. I've noticed that I think in the last 2 years, people started sharing more information about their personal life on LinkedIn, like sometimes a birth of a baby or something significant, a graduation of children from university. And do you think that with time, I don't know, TikTok will become also a useful social media for lawyers?
Yeah, well, it's already very much used by a lot of politicians. So probably yes. Again, it's what for, and this has to do with the next topic, I think, which is what do you actually want to communicate on this social media? What is your goal? What is it that you want to reach? Because it's true that, I mean, we are not actors, we're not politicians. So what is our ultimate goal when we communicate on social media? I think this is what the question is. It's not just communicating about ourselves, I think.
Yeah, and I would just briefly add that also each platform has its audience, and depending on the audience, you may want to convey different message. And for example, where the audience is young, like with this modern recent ones, the applications, you may want to concentrate on generally having a positive image as a law firm, encourage people to go into law, to study law, to become lawyers, and showing that it is a very good profession, it's prestigious, and you can achieve a lot. And more or less, it's just maintaining this image. And probably you don't want to go into any further details because you wouldn't be understood at that platform.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different, there are many different messages that you can convey on social media. And also, you know, the graduation of your kids, why not? You know, why not? My point was more because there are so many different options. My advice would be to keep control on what is going out and think about the messages that we are conveying. I think that's the point.
In addition to the message, I think it also goes to format. We know that some people just don't have time to read anymore. You know, would listen to something or look at a film more easily than they would actually read text. So I think this also, I mean, we need to think how we want to communicate the message, whether it might be more efficient to have a short video rather than a long text for people to then open up and read down. And I think here maybe alternative platforms might come in use, increasingly so, especially for the younger generation who's grown up with more videos than text.
Yeah. Well, of course, it also depends on how you know, you see your profile, because you know, of course, there are also people who, you know, want to build a profile that is more maybe towards the academic side. So there, of course, you know, video are probably a bit less interesting. I mean, it depends to, again, the profile you want to build. And it can be very diverse, of course. That's pretty obvious. But I think it's good to give it a thought beforehand, you know, when communicating, because it seems that the flow is so, it goes very quickly, and I think it's good to pause and to think about what we are actually communicating, which is, again, it's the next topic.
Shall we move on to the next topic, Anna?
Yeah, that I was going to say, because we have many other topics that we will discuss today, but this topic is quite important. Just before doing something, just to understand, maybe to really to understand what you want to communicate and how you want to build your profile and what message you are sending. And for the next question, it's our next question is what to communicate and not to communicate on social media. We have already started to discuss, but to go in more details, Katrine, what is your opinion?
Thanks, Anna. So I'll start with a word of caution. And in fact, Valentin has already hinted at this on several occasions. So first of all, beware that what you put out there stays out there as a rule. So you just need to be aware of this. Why? Because sometimes we're tempted to just throw something out there. Now, for example, you want to be an arbitrator later on, and you publish something, you take a very extreme position on a certain issue, for example, document production, because you think, if I'm extreme, then I'll get more attention, and that's great, I'll get more views, etc., etc. But then later on, many years later down the line, when people do their due diligence about the prospective arbitrator, they'd find these statements that you made when you were a baby arbitration practitioner, and they will say, oh no, we can't appoint somebody like that. So you really need to be aware of that. And it's not only, if you aim at being an arbitrator, even if you just apply for a job interview, and just an anecdote on that, we were doing our due diligence on a candidate, and we came up with I think it was a YouTube video of a Christmas party when that candidate was really drunk. Now, we know that it happens, but you also need to know that things can be, even if you haven't posted it, things might be out there. So one tip of advice is that you screen regularly the internet to see what people find when they type your name, in Google Images, Google Video. So that was just an anecdote. Now, going back to content, what to communicate, what should you communicate? We've talked about the platforms, now content. Well, obviously you would want to publish interesting news, but what is of interest really depends on your audience. What works a lot, I find, is typical short news flashes on an area of expertise, either a legal area or something to do with an industry. That would be my preference. If you work in the construction industry, for example, in construction arbitration, and you see something that is highly topical, you can publish a short piece on this, and that will show that you're active in this field, that you're on top of this field, and will also interest a broader range of people beyond your contacts. Now, publications generally, again, yes, it's good to announce that you have a publication. Again, LinkedIn, I think, is a good way of saying that you've published something on an interesting topic. I think then it's more a question of how you sell it in a few words, so that people are then tempted to go beyond the initial post and download the article and actually read it. So I think for me, and don't take me wrong, I'm not a fan of President Trump, but I think he had a very good use of buzzwords that we should emulate but in the positive sense, when we post things online, to be short, punchy, to the point, and make people want to learn more about the topic in question. Now, what we see a lot on LinkedIn is, I am honored to speak at this and this conference. I am delighted to have been invited to speak at this conference. For me, I think people have seen enough of that. There's too much of that. You can get the message across that you're great in different manners. First of all, you can turn this a bit differently to say, well, there is an event about this topic. I look forward to seeing you there. It's a bit less, let's say, annoying than I am so honored because I'll be put on a platform on stage and you'll all be listening to me. There's also, I think, one of the things some of my colleagues and other arbitration practitioners do quite efficiently is put forward other people, the other speakers who attend the conference, and by putting them forward, in reality, you benefit from the shine effect. So I think that is very effective. Now, what do you do if you haven't been invited to speak? You can still do this by summarizing, for example, interesting points you heard at a conference and make other people shine. And again, you benefit from that shine effect. So I think that is a very efficient use of social media to promote yourself and to promote your peers. What I find even more efficient with in particular LinkedIn is to see when other people publish either content publications or career moves, and then you use that to reach out to them individually, a personal message, and say, hi, I saw you've moved or you created your firm, you've got this new position, that's great, we should catch up. Because that personal one-to-one relationship is something that gets a bit lost. And we have these tools, and these are almost, alarm bells going on saying, listen, you need to reach out to this person. You haven't been in contact for several months, even years, maybe. Now this is a good pretext to, just say hi and renew that contact. So to sum up, don't make it all about yourself, involve others and reach out to others.
Yes, I think you're completely right, Catherine. And personally, what I also like seeing on LinkedIn is people who again are not, necessarily big specialists or invited to conferences or so on, but they just flag, for instance, an interesting state court decision, and they write 2 lines about that. So these 2 lines, it may take time because it's you read it in 3 seconds, but it's true that again it's something that you have to prepare. But I think it's very useful. At least it's something I like seeing because I find it a useful source of information. It's true that there is a lot about rankings, a lot about all this stuff. I think it's again it's something that it's inherent to this kind of tool, this kind of media. So why not? But the posts that I really like are those, and also I like it when people flag a publication that they did, for instance, on Plur blog, which I think is a great platform for young people, but young practitioners, but not only. Not only we see very high profile practitioners writing on Plur blog. It's a very good quality and it's accessible to everybody. It's usually about 2,000 words. So it's something feasible, and I think it's something that can be easily promoted on social media. It's kind of a good platform that gives a lot of visibility for people's work and ideas.
Yeah, and just a couple maybe tips on LinkedIn, because I also didn't know about it, but there are several points how it actually works. I think when you connect to someone, it's not automatically that whatever you post becomes visible to that person. You need to like or repost or share at least a couple of things from that other person, what he or she is posting, that your posts become available and included into the stories that are seen by that person. So basically, just by connecting to someone, for example, after you met with someone at an event, it's not automatically that you will actually become involved and be part of this interaction. So try to also look into other people, what they post, and you can comment, you can like, you can reshare, so interact with others as well.
Maybe one question that arises with the use of social media is how often, how active, what is enough, what is too much. And I think it's a difficult balance, because on the one hand, you want to be visible. So of course, it's good to be involved. And I think there are different ways of being involved. Typically, as you said, Alexander, commenting on somebody else's feed, well, that shows that, you react, but doesn't mean that you spend necessarily all your time doing this. If people see that, you've been speaking at 10 conferences per day, then people might be asking themselves, well, does that person actually have real work, or is that person just attending conferences? So I think one needs to be aware of that, that too much is also not good and has negative adverse effects. But I think, commenting on what other people do, liking, is also a manner of being visible without necessarily spending too much time on LinkedIn, or suggesting that you have too much time to spend on LinkedIn.
It's true that sometimes I heard comments, maybe some people even said it about me, but not to me directly, but that if somebody likes too many posts or publish too many comments, then some people think, oh, okay, does this person spend all his time just scrolling LinkedIn? So it's always tricky.
It's a
and
balance.
Also, yes, and it's also when you describe your activity. I think the most often people use "I'm delighted," "I'm honored," and then the people were joking just "I'm honored to be honored to be honored to be here." And for me personally, sometimes I'm struggling to write something, and I think that one of the things that can be useful is also to publish a nice photo. If you speak at a conference, maybe not to publish a photo of you and other panelists. You can publish a photo of the city or something that just will distract people in a good way. Then, because like we've seen, especially at the beginning of COVID, we've seen too much pictures from Zoom. And when you take a pictures, usually somebody is talking and you have this very funny facial expressions and it stays there.
So maybe on the use of images, also beware of the rights behind images. There are a lot of websites where you can register and use their images and you get the license to use those images. Beware of stealing images on the net. I think this is something people might not be sufficiently aware of, including some French politicians. Valentine will get the hint. So beware of the images you do post on LinkedIn.
True.
Okay, thank you for your answers, for your comments. Now let's turn to the next question is how to network in this difficult COVID time, and what are the tips how to keep in touch, maybe some advices, some different some initiatives how to do it. Alexander, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say first that the dynamic on the virtual conferences networking is totally different from offline, and you definitely don't have the same personal connection that you might have meeting somebody in person at a conference or other event, or just being in the same place with somebody. Therefore, you really need to think what to do to get the same effect. And first of all, many conferences, they allow this breakout rooms where you can speak to people. But so my experience is not that good. You never know what you can see in this breakout rooms. It could be totally disorganized and people just discussing something totally not relevant or just chatting, and there could be too many people. So basically, the best way, what I've seen, how the conferences arranged it, is doing it like separate rooms, tables, with special moderators dedicated to special topics, where, for example, you can choose where you go. For example, there is a topic that you're interested in, and you have something to contribute and discuss. And usually there are smaller groups in these breakout rooms, so you can definitely be heard and become more acquainted with who is there and discuss a particular topic. But generally, it's again not ideal. It's still not the same what you would get in a real event, offline event. So the best way is, of course, just to see who is attending some event. If you want to get connected, you can just write directly to that person. I see that you're attending this event. I'm also attending. Can we connect? And maybe just suggest, can we have like a short call, direct call with somebody that you want to establish or maintain some relationship. That could be much more productive than the tools we currently have at these conferences. And this could give you, I think at this time, people are very eager to quickly jump on the call. It's not something unusual. People get used to having video all the time. So if you want to establish relationship and select with whom you want to talk, just probably try contacting that person directly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said, Alexander. I think this allows to have access to more senior practitioners as well much more easily. And I think people should, or should dare just sending a message linked to an event and say, as a follow-up, would it be possible to have a quick chat? In the worst case scenario, the person doesn't respond because that person is too busy, and that's the end of it. And it's much easier to do that than what we would have normally, going up to a person more senior when you're in the physical setting when you're young is not always easy. I'm not saying it can't be done, and I think a lot of more senior practitioners do appreciate, but I know it's more difficult. Whereas a small message on the virtual conference setting, or after it's by email or via LinkedIn, that can be very effective.
Yes, I completely agree as well. Well, I think maybe one last thing about the difference between in-person networking and virtual networking is that sometimes in the in-person networking, so when you go to conferences, for instance, you meet people and this is by complete coincidence, it's a bit random. You end up speaking with people you had not necessarily foreseen, or it was not calculated. You just end up speaking with this person, and that's the nice thing about you have to allow yourself to have this kind of moments, I think, when you go to conferences, and this is how you can I think it's the real advantage of the in-person networking. There again, there are a lot of conferences in international arbitration. A little bit less after COVID, but we see every day about the New York Arbitration Week, Paris Arbitration Week, Dubai Arbitration Week, Miami. I think it's good also there to make a selection, a little bit like with social media. You can't be everywhere all the time, so and it can be stressful to see all these conferences where you can't go. So I think there again, it's good if you go to a conference to prepare a little bit the topic of the conference beforehand, so that you can actually learn something, and see the list of participants if it's possible, because for instance, there are GDPR issues now, not everybody provides the list of participants. Prepare a little bit beforehand, select the conference that corresponds, more to your, again, to the profile you want to build, or that simply, the topic is interesting, or it's in a country where you think it's useful for you to work, or all these kind of considerations. There are many different factors, and then. So be prepared, but once you're there, allow yourself to have, to meet randomly and a bit spontaneously.
Thank you, Valentin. By the way, for our audience, if you have any questions or comments, please share with us in a comments box on YouTube. We have just 10 minutes to go. I would like just to mention before we turn into the next topic that join professional communities. Sometimes it's easier to network, to find new connections, friends, when you are within some limited space. So for example, arbitral women, they organize dinners, events. I know that Katrine co-founded initiative Meet of Thursdays. There is a spin-off, I think, Young Meet of Thursdays. And there are different initiatives when you have incentive to join, and the people are open to speak to you, to socialize. So if you're shy or you don't feel comfortable, sometimes, yes, it's when you, for example, for GAR events, when you go there, usually you see senior partners, and when you say, oh, I'm second year associate, just okay. Some people just, okay, you're second year, come talk to me in 5 years. So just don't be afraid. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's people are not very open to talk to you, but just concentrate on people who are nice. So I'm sure that four of us, if you see us at the conference, we will be happy to talk to you. Okay, our
just maybe
question.
just on that goes exactly to that point. Don't be shy in the sense that dare to ask questions. I think, you know, speakers, panelists, moderators always welcome that very courageous person who dares to ask the first question, and that person is remembered. So if you have prepared in advance of the conference, as Valentine suggested, which is great, then you also know enough to be able to at least ask a question. You don't need to have the answer. People will be grateful to you for having done so and will also remember you. So this is a great technique to become visible, to have your voice heard.
True.
Thank you, Catherine. And our last topic is communication with the team and within the team. And first question is how to effectively request and receive feedback. It's quite a sensitive topic, and it's difficult at different levels of seniority. Katrina, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So how to request feedback? I think the first thing is do that smartly, in the sense that if you've prepared a first draft, compare it against, you know, the final version, and already try to understand some of the changes that were made. Then you can ask questions and follow-up questions on those changes you haven't understood, but it shows the person who has reviewed your initial draft that you've thought about it, that you've taken it seriously, and that you've already done a lot of the work yourself. So that is a first tip. I also think it's good to ask for feedback immediately after a certain task, or, I mean, not wait for several months, because then you will just get general feedback, which is very subjective, whereas after an immediate task, well, you know, it's fresh in the reviewer's mind, for example, how you should improve the way you present arguments, for example, but choose your time right. Sometimes, you know, the partner or more senior associate might be extremely stressed and in a bad mood. That's not the right time. So try to choose your timing right, but still close enough to the task you've performed. I think the setting, and I'll stop with that on these initial comments, is also important. I think you gain a lot through informal feedback, because it's more relaxed on both sides. Formal feedback, you know, sometimes there are note-taking for HR purposes. It's always a bit more delicate as an exercise. It also goes then into a kind of system, you know, your review, which might have an impact on the bonus you receive at the end of the year. But informal feedback, that can be done, you know, very easily. I was just going to say at the coffee machine. Yes, it can also be done via VC, obviously, and that's maybe easier to just send an email, say, you know, if you have 10 minutes, I would really appreciate some feedback on just a specific task. And I mean, I would, in most cases in my experience, then people do take the time to give you that feedback. If you phrase it in the sense that I want my work to improve for the future, so that you will have less work in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all for informal feedback. And I agree that when it becomes formal, you lose something. It's different. The good feedback, I think, is the informal feedback, and yes, the coffee machine is a good spot.
Yeah, and I would really support the idea to have the feedback not to wait too long, because if it goes to some formal mid-year or some other evaluation, and you ask, what is the feedback for the past half a year? You don't really you can remember something that is in your mind, very specific, like you made some comment and it's stuck in your mind, but generally you would not remember the details. And it's better to ask for a feedback more or less, either not immediately, but in some reasonable time after there was some either hearing or submission or specific document or something else. Otherwise, you just lose this reaction. People do not really remember the details for that long.
Mm.
And also, I think that once you get your feedback, it's better to take some notes afterwards, so then you will remember for yourself in 2-3 months. And sometimes it just it's also it depends on different criteria. Different partners pay attention to different things. And for with HU firms, do you have only feedbacks only for junior colleagues, or you have also people who are working in the team give feedbacks to partners?
At our firm, it really depends on the individual partner. We don't have a formal 360-degree review system, at least not yet. I personally always ask my team to also give me feedback. So, you know, it's really a conversation, but I think this is something the younger generation is more familiar with, not necessarily the older generation. So one needs to be aware of that. I also think it's a difficult exercise because feedback by definition, let's say not by definition precisely, but often tends to be focused on the negative or what should be improved. And often you say, yeah, generally was great, but this you need to improve. And one needs to be aware both as the person receiving feedback or giving feedback, and whatever the position in the hierarchy, that it doesn't mean that the positive doesn't prevail, is not more important than the negative, but that we focus on the negative in a constructive approach. And I think it's very valuable to have this conversation. And I would recommend to the seniors to also ask for feedback, because if somebody gets it wrong, chances are it's not because that person is dumb, it's because your instructions were bad. It's not always the case, but sometimes it is.
True. Yes, reverse feedback is really good, and but sometimes it's difficult for the most senior person to be in a position to ask this kind of feedback. But I think again it has to, when it's done informally, it's easier rather than in a process, because it doesn't work, I think, in a very structured process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in our firm, we usually ask it in our evaluation meetings, regular ones. Normally, it's more time, of course, is given that we provide feedback, but we always ask, well, what do you have for us? Do you have any comments, questions? Maybe there are some ways that we can improve how we structure the work. And there are some good suggestions, usually, from these discussions.
I think there's also a question between, having a group feedback when, in a team, if there was a big filing or hearing, you've got this initial group feedback and then the individual feedback. And I think you can get messages across at different levels.
Filing the most difficult one. For, I think filings, hearings, are just everybody is stressed, and you have sleepless nights. Okay, I believe that we don't have questions from the audience. Thank you very much for your honest answers. I hope that we inspire our audience not to be shy and to use communication in a way to advance their career and build good relationship with their colleagues and or generally in arbitration community. And with Alexander, we hope that one of the next conferences we will meet in Kyiv.
Yes, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.